After how long can you sell an apartment in Israel? The law in the state of Israel has few restrictions regarding a person's right to purchase and sell properties. But there are cases in which there is a restriction on the sale period, especially when it comes to government plans such as price per occupant or tenders. When we face the question of after how long it is possible to sell an apartment, in fact we mean after how long it is possible to sell an apartment tax-free. It is true that there is no restriction on the sale of an apartment, but there is certainly a restriction or sanction in the field of Israeli tax law for those who want to sell their apartment earlier than the time limit set for receiving an exemption from praise tax or purchase tax. Real estate taxation law. According to Section 1 of the Real Estate Tax Law, the sale of a right in real estate is a transfer, grant, or waiver of a right in real estate for consideration or not in return. However, the field of real estate taxation is considered complex and one that changes daily. So when you come to buy or sell an apartment and make a real estate transaction, it is worthwhile to contact a qualified and experienced real estate lawyer who lives in the field. What is appraised tax? Appreciation tax is a tax paid at the time of the sale to the tax authority for a profit generated after a real estate transaction. Two conditions are supposed to be met in order for a payment of appreciation tax to be necessary. One is that there will be a sale of a right in real estate, and the other is that a profit will be made on the sale. This profit is calculated as the difference between the purchase price of the apartment and the price of the sale of the apartment. However, the price is not definite. As stated in Section 39 of the Real Estate Tax Law, there are expenses that can be deducted when calculating the appreciation tax. When it comes to goodwill tax in a residential apartment, the aspect and component of time has meaning and consequences, and it is definitely advisable to carefully examine the regulations and sections in the law. And thus, in some cases, it will be possible to reduce the amount of goodwill tax.
Time simulator for selling an apartment. When it comes to selling an apartment, it is common to ask, after how long can an apartment be sold? In order to facilitate and assist those who want to know the details and control the relevant schedule, a dedicated simulator has been developed that weighs part of the relevant time period for the transaction of selling an apartment and the tax calculations that are necessary. The calculation of times has a decisive effect and implication on the tax burden in the sale of the apartment. The simulator is convenient to use and accurate, but there is more data that needs to be considered. For example, a calculation of appreciation tax on an inherited apartment would be completely different. Due to the differences in the calculation of praise tax between the different types of real estate sale transactions, it is critical to consult with an experienced apartment sale Israeli lawyer in order to perform an accurate and final time calculation even before selling or buying the apartment. Getting initial real estate tax advice is free and can be quite significant and beneficial in terms of cost savings and financial preparation. Thinking about the future. In Israel, buying an apartment is often perceived as an emotional move, and it is definitely advisable to avoid it. However, if not, it is imperative to consider their steps ahead of time and think after how long an apartment can be sold even before they have bought the apartment itself. Therefore, it is important to plan the various dates for buying and selling in advance in order to significantly save on paying taxes. A law firm that specializes in real estate will analyze the expected schedule with you as part of proper, helpful, and creative tax planning, all within the framework of fees.
Additional restrictions on the dates when an apartment can be sold. There are several other restrictions in the rulebook depending on the circumstances of each case that affect the question of how long it is possible to sell an apartment. Tenant price plan and additional plans. Usually in government plans, there is a limit to the period of the sale. In this case, a restriction imposed on the right itself, and not just a restriction relating to taxation matters. In a price per tenant program, it is not possible to sell an apartment 7 years from the day the contractor won the tender or 5 years from the issuance of a Form 4, whichever is earlier. Sale of an apartment received as a gift. When it comes to the sale of an apartment received as a gift, it is required to wait another cooling-off period before the sale can be made in order to enjoy an exemption from paying praise tax. Sale of an inherited apartment. When selling an inherited apartment, there are specific and separate exemptions pertaining to this transaction, and in order to fulfill the conditions for obtaining the exemption, different time periods must be considered and taken into account depending on the testator's condition at the time of death. Exemptions for housing improvers. If the sellers purchase the replacement apartment even before they have sold their current apartment, there is an exemption from paying praise tax on the old apartment, as well as an exemption from paying purchase tax on the new apartment. This exemption depends on the time, and in this particular case, the acquaintance must be efficient with their time. A lawyer selling an apartment and buying an apartment must specialize in real estate taxation and understand economics in order to assist his client in an efficient manner. Therefore, our firm employs only lawyers with a broad financial education, in addition to a law license, to assist its clients with tax planning at no extra charge. So after how long can you sell an apartment? The answer to this question lies in the circumstances of the sale. In the case of a sale of an apartment purchased 18 months or more ago, an exemption from payment of praise tax will be granted. In addition, additional exemptions may be granted depending on the circumstances of the sale, so it is important to consult with an expert and skilled lawyer from the beginning in order to examine the details and recommend the appropriate and correct course of action for you. Undoubtedly, a correct calculation of tax in the sale of an apartment can save you a lot of money.
Professional advice and guidance from experts in the field of real estate taxation. Law firm and notary Scheiman Hahn specializes in the field of civil law, commercial, real estate law, wills and inheritances, execution, insurance claims, and more. Our leading and experienced team of lawyers will accompany you all the way, and will begin the process of buying or selling the real estate property in a professional and correct tax planning that will work for the benefit of the client. The service we provide to our clients is provided after a consultation and personal conversation regarding reducing the client's tax rate according to the specific circumstances of the transaction and the client's personal data. We are at your service with every question and request, and we will be happy to provide you with a professional answer intended to achieve the best results for the customer.